Nigeria, European Union leaders have agreed to provide stronger support to Italy for its work in Libya and replenish their Africa fund to further curb immigration to Europe. EU Executive European Commission told the group they needed to immediately chip in an extra 225 million euros for migration-related projects in Africa due to run this year and early next. Let's bring in Global Affairs Policy Analyst Collins Nweke joining me now to discuss this. Collins, good to have you on the Midday News. First of all, let's clarify this. Is it important, is it necessary at all to clarify the motive behind this help from the EU, either to focus on salvaging the situation in Africa or to deter, even to lower the number of arrivals from Africa through the Mediterranean Sea?
I think there is a win-win in a situation where migration is managed in such a way that the unhealthy influx, and I want to put some emphasis on unhealthy influx of migrants from Africa to Europe. Indeed, there is something for Europe to gain as a result of such, curbing good policy. But at the same time, Africa stands, one way or the other to gain from a well-measured, well-thought-through policy, which is actually what has been lacking all of these years. I think Europe has been, before now, more concerned with the short-term benefit, repressive, measures and all of that, without necessarily looking at the root cause of migration and, beginning to take steps to tackle it. That appears to be what they are doing now, and of course, actually starting in 2015, when the a special fund, 2 billion euros was earmarked to handle the matter. So that's what is happening now is a continuation of that process that kicked in 2015. And so, yes, it is a win-win on both sides.
Right. Now, 225 million euros, that's a whopping amount, you'd agree. Talking about migration-related projects, what are we looking at here? What are we expecting to see this year and next?
Well, I think the last 2 years was spent mainly on, border control measures, where, again, the emphasis was more on fortifying the entry borders, in this case, Libya and the rest of them. But also, right now, the waters of Italy is a target. While that is one of the building blocks to achieving a well thought through policy, I believe that it is insufficient. Insufficient in the sense that if you do not go straight to the source countries, where these these migrants are coming from, and do something there, the problem will continue to reoccur. So what they have done in the last 2 years was, setting up projects in Africa that target a certain demographics, the young people who have the tendency and the propensity to leave Africa and come to Europe, facilitate activities that will give them gainful employment, but also information campaign to let them understand that the risk is not worth taking. So I hope that the extra fund that is being sought will also be channeled more to such initiatives that will give young people more perspectives in Africa. And at a later stage, hopefully, they can begin to think also of, and this is very important, legal migration, because migration is as old as the world, and you cannot sort migration out by wanting to close the borders. You have to find one way or the other of admitting people legally.
And Collins, in one of the recent statements from German Chancellor Angela Merkel, she praised Turkey for their help in Syria and other parts of that region. But she specifically said that money, the money from the EU, is helping the refugees who are living under very difficult conditions. In Africa, are you optimistic that these monies, these donations from the West will indeed reach the refugees, those living in those harsh conditions that the monies are actually meant for?
I'm happy you raised this point. Essentially, all you have said can simply be, summarized with one word: corruption. It is an issue, and a very, very huge issue. As a matter of fact, in the meeting just concluded in Paris by, between African leaders and seven European leaders, including Angela Merkel, like you mentioned, the president of Chad actually made a statement, in trying to adduce the basis for the influx of African migrants to Europe. And he narrowed it down to 2 points. Those 2 points, in his views, are lack of education and high level of poverty in Africa. When you hear things like that coming from African leaders, you have the impression that either they are in denial about the main issue, or they just don't get it. The main issue, and in fact, 80% of the main issue is corruption. Right. That these funds do not get exactly to tackle the projects that they are supposed to be tackling. So African leaders need to sit up as far as that is concerned, but Europe as well needs to tighten the belt and ensure that they explore other non-traditional ways of development assistance, where civil society organizations are involved more rather than the traditional bilateral way of going about it.
All right, Colin, so definitely we'll keep our eyes open to see how these monies will be used in the coming months and up to next year. Colin Nweke, Global Affairs Policy Analyst, thank you very much for joining us here on the Media News.